So we are on Amud Chof Beis. And we are now, one second. Okay, we're going to continue the themes as we discussed last time. We're going to get to Yechayeinu, Miyomayim, and B'yem HaShlishi, talking about Elam Hazeh, and in contrast to Lasid Lavei. We're going to bring in the themes of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur as well, and associate these two Purushim, how they follow a similar pattern. We're going to add also the inyan of Tshuva. Till now we said the Aveda is the Amir's Psukei HaTorah of Malchus that achieves the hemshekh ha'atzmus on Rosh Hashanah, the Ratzon in Lucha in Atzmus Ein Sof. And now we're going to bring in the role of Teshuvah very briefly. But the next Maimer will elaborate a lot further of what is the Aved of Tshuva on Rosh Hashanah, Yom Neiraim, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. Okay. Some of the sections will be just as terse and difficult to follow as it's been throughout the Maimer. And we just have to accept that this Maimer is not overladen with clear hasbara like we had in the first Maimer. It's just the style of the Maimer. And we have to pick up pieces from here and there, as long as we stick to this, understand the theme, which I will make a siyum and a sikkum at the end to understand how it's playing out in the course of the hemshekh. But there are lots of very key pieces of information that are being laid out now, which are going to be very, very significant when we come to the end. So the hasbara and the context will become clearer, and for the meantime we just have to sort of clock them and log them in, and hopefully they'll come to their fruition later on in the hemshekh. How will be mamshech the gilui of the Ratzon in Lucha? That is achieved through the Tshuva. Because the Aved of Tshuva is an Aveda itself, which is from the Sheirish U'Makah HaNeshamas. If Neshamas Yisrael are the ones who are capable of being mamshich, this madrega, this davka, the Aveda of those Neshamas, which is the very Pnimius HaNeshama. And Teshuvah is an Aveda which comes from the Pnimius HaNeshama. But he adds, V'yesh loymar, she'kamoi kein al yidei Aveda the Neshama Yisrael b'kiyum ateirim mitzvahs mamshichim gam kim b'chinazu. Not just through Teshuvah, also the Aveda of Neshama Yisrael as he just learned teirim b'kiyum tzai mitzvahs. Mitzad mailus u'madregas Neshama ha'mekayim ateirim mitzvahs. So not just Teshuvah, also kiyum ateirim mitzvahs. But not just any old kiyum ateirim mitzvahs, dafka, a type of kiyum ateirim mitzvahs which comes from the etzem Neshama. Hainu b'kiyum ateirim mitzvahs b'bechinas kabbalas el malchus shemayim. Shezeh shaykh la'aveda b'bechinas etzem Neshama shelamayla mitam v'das. Dafka in the being mekayim teirim mitzvahs in a manner of kabbalas el, of complete subservience, above and beyond any rationale and reasoning for being mekayim teirim mitzvahs, that stems from the etzem Neshama. So such an Aveda has the koyach to be mamshich from Atzmus Ein Sof. You're only doing because you've been told to do it, not because you want to do it, not because you understand that you should do it, because you've been told to do it. Complete obedience. And this goes back to the theme that we brought, the Maimon Razal, Bini Yiserinit V'Isha, the additional measure of Bina which is given to women. Because the woman is the makabel, is Neshamas Yisrael, is all forms of makabel. It's a reference to all forms of makabel. Dibur, Isha, Guf, Bechinas, Knesset Yisrael, Shenikra Kala. But most importantly to Knesset Yisrael, which is the Sherish Umakri of Neshamas Yisrael, in Malchus Vatzilis, which is called a Kala. And the product of Knesset Yisrael, the Sherish Umakri of Neshamas Yisrael, is the production of Neshamas Yisrael. And those Neshamas Yisrael, Shehem Makablim Me'at Torah, they receive from the Torah. As things stand in Seder Shtalshlus Begilui, it appears that Torah is superior to Yisrael. Because it's the Mashpia. You assume the Mashpia in Seder Shtalshlus, in the rules and sort of the comprehension of Seder Shtalshlus, the Mashpia is superior to the Mekabel. Shehi Bechinas Tipas Abba Shenimshach Yisrael. This is the drop of the Father, hemshekh of Chachma Ilah, of Atzilus, the Makkah HaTorah, into Yisrael. So they're inferior in the Seder V'Shtalshus, the way things are perceived in the Begilui and Seder Shtalshus. Omnam yesh bohem b'nei Yisera, but they have this extraordinary capacity. Shemamshichim b'chinas ha'atzmos, so they're capable of being mamshich atzmos. And that's why specifically through them, it's possible for there to be creation and birth of something that is comparable to themselves. The Makablim can create Makablim, whereas Mashpiyim can't create anything. Okay, now we're going to go into the association of Yechayeinu Miyomayim with Tishrei, Rosh Hashanah, all the way till Shmini Atzeres. Generally, when we say Yechayeinu Miyomayim, it's a reference to the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah. In Chassidus at least, not in the Mefarshei Tanakh. Maybe there is a mocker before the Alter Rebbe, but it's definitely not emphasized by the Mefarshei Tanakh. So we know from Sifrei Kabbalah that the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah are associated with the Darga of Keser and the Darga of Chachma Vatzilus. That's why they're both days are called a Rosh. To be called a Rosh, a head, it's appropriate to call that to both Keser and to Chachma. Seichel is the head, and the Keser is the Keser of the head. So Rosh is a term that is applicable to both. And this is what we mean when we say in Rosh Hashanah, we say in davening, and we say in Kiddush, Ki chayk li Yisrael hu mishpat lekei Yaakov. That it is a chayk to Yisrael, and it's a mishpat to Yaakov, lekei Yaakov. So what is this chayk and mishpat? The chayk hu Torah. A chayk, a statute, a rule, a law, is a reference to Torah. Shabba al yodai nimshach hamshachas eira seviv kolamim b'Yisrael. But through Torah, it causes there should be hemshekh of seviv kolamim in Yisrael. Ki chayk li Yisrael. Mishpat lekei Yaakov b'chinas ha-mitzvahs. Whereas mishpat is associated with mitzvahs. Al yodam nimshach ha'oir b'chinas Yaakov. The oir is able to be nimshach to the darga of Yaakov. The seviv kolamim should be nimshach, not adjusted to the darga of Yisrael, the higher darga of Yidden, but also to the darga of Yaakov. V'zo gam kin Yemayim shu elam hazav v'gan Eden shem gam kin b'chinas memale kolamim v'seviv kolamim. So we had a lot of these references before. Yeah, a little bit more spelled out. But again, just not much hasbara, just identifying dargas and associating them. Everything we said until now is what? The on Rosh Hashanah through the Avodah of Yidden, saying Psukei Malchus and doing Tshuva, B'chlal, there's hemshekh atzmos. Now we're saying Yechayeinu Miyomayim is just Keser and Chachma. Oh, Mamalik Lam, Seif Kalam, no Atmos here in Seif. What's that? Dafka b'Yom HaShlishi, Dafka Yom Kippur. What's wrong with Rosh Hashanah? We've just said our whole Hasbara now has been about Rosh Hashanah. Ha'emes Keinu. The truth is that there is indeed Hamshachas Ha'atzmus. Ela shezo b'chinas is oirus levad, but the Hamshach is not quite nimshach. It's in a state of his oirus, meaning that it's been triggered that there should be Hamshachas Ha'atzmus. Aval einin nimshach b'gilui adayin, it doesn't yet become nimshach. Ad Yom HaKippurim v'Chag HaSukkos u'Shmini Atzeres Chuli, until later in the month. So it has a bracket here that goes on to the next page. V'yesh loimar, and one can say that Yom HaKippurim hu b'chinas aliyah, shemis'alim b'chinas ha'atzmus. On Yom Kippur there's an aliyah to the diagram of Atmos ki yidu b'inyan aliyah de ne'ilah, should be connected to the aliyah that happens at the time of ne'ilah. Sha'amalchus oila b'shar she'berad lo ad she'rishar sha'arishin b'chinas Atmos ein seif. On Yom Kippur there's an aliyah ha'malchus all the way to its she'rish rishain in Atmos ein seif. Uv Sukkos nimshach b'chinas makiv. On Sukkos this Atmos ein Sof is nimshach in a manner of makif. U'achakach b'Shmini Atzeres nimshach in a skilu b'pnimius. And on Shmini Atzeres you have the klita b'pnimius. So standard beer of how the giluim of Tishrei. U'mikol mokim tzarich leima shegam b'Yom HaKippurim yesh hamshachas. On Yom HaKippurim you don't just say there's an aliyah, there's also hamshacha. K'mayim Razal aslicha mufkedes etzlecha miRosh Hashanah ad Yom HaKippurim. The slicha, the forgiveness, is deposited with you from Rosh Hashanah ad Yom HaKippurim. Uv Yom HaKippurim ha'yu nimshach haslicha. So there's hamshachas haslicha. So there is a hamshach in Yom Kippur of some sort. So the Rabbi Rashab says, "V'yesh loima b'derech efsha." The Frierdiker Rebbe's says, by my father is a derech efsha is by mir vadai. Al derech dugma kamei b'Shabbos leYerid. So on Shabbos there would be no Yeridas Haman. We say on Shabbos the union of Aliyas. But at the same time, when it comes to Lamaila, the Hamshacha, the way it is Lamaila, is the Ikka on Shabbos. My name is Baruch and Kol Yom. On Shabbos, from Shabbos you get the bracha for all of the parnasa for the whole week. So you say the same thing when it comes to Tishrei, that the Ikka Hamshacha Ha'atzmus is on Yom Kippur, but it takes till Sukkot and Shmini Atzeres till the Hamshacha can be nimshach, first b'makif and then b'pnimius.
So what's the pshat gilei b'makif? That there's a... I'm asking you.
I'm not sure what the basis of the question is.
What is that? So does makif means, what does that mean? Makif over here.
The oir is not yet nishtalshul to the extent that it's able to be mislabash and kelim. It's still a gilu.
When you say kelim, what kelim? We're talking about the world? Or
yeah, ourselves, the world. Yeah.
And but it's a gilu. It's a oir of the gather of gilu.
All oir of the gather gilu.
Fine.
So Mashe Mei Begilui B'Rosh Hashanah Hu B'chinas Kesa V'Chochma. As we said at the beginning, Rosh is Kesa V'Chochma. U'Vayom HaShlishi Yikimenu V'Nichi Lefonov Hu B'Yom HaKippurim. The Yom HaKippurim B'chinas Atik B'chinas Rad Lo B'Chin Yom HaKippurim Ein B'Yachil U'Shtia. So the Rosh Hashanah you have the what's Begilui is just Dargaz HaKesa and Dargaz HaChochma. And it's not till the third day in Yom Kippur where you have the Gilu Atik, the Gilu B'chinas Radla, the Gilu Sheirish HaMalchus, the way it is in Radla. These are dargas we talked about earlier, if you remember. We explained Pnimius Atik. And that's when in Yom Kippur you don't have eating and drinking. But Dugmat La'asid Shli Yikablu Chayusam Echil Eshtia. The way it will be La'asid Lavei, where we won't need to eat or drink. Just like it says, Moshe Rabbeinu, he didn't eat for all that time. He was in his goof and he didn't have to eat. Right? So this whole relationship between the body and the soul, usually why do you need to eat? In order for there to be a chibur of neshama and guf, you have to eat and drink. There are times, and on Yom Kippur, where you don't have to eat or drink in order to be alive. Doesn't mean you don't need a body. The body is able to
be sustained.
Yeah, and that's something we're going to talk about in the last mimer. I know I'm piling a lot onto the last mimer, but this mimer it gives a certain indications towards what's going to come at the end. So that's going to be a sugya, an important sugya at the end, about not eating and drinking. We're going to be we're going to live before him. And so we have a dogma of what it's going to be like lost loving. It's manat chiyah on Yom Kippur when we don't eat or drink. Okay? But after yesh leimar, it's also possible to say the bechinas hamshachos ha'atzma sheyeh la'asid yeh gamkim b'teira mitzvahs. That we've just said that we didn't say now, but we said earlier that there's going to be this gilo atzbus in this manat chiyah. Whereas nowadays, the hemshekh atzmus is al yidei avid and neshama yisrael became atir mitzvahs the kabbalah sel malchus shemayim. But that's not necessarily going to be last loving in the manat chiyah. He's suggesting there will be gamkim atir mitzvahs elashul lamayla atir mitzvahs da'achshav. This is also another indicator of something that's going to be a major thing towards the end, not just in the last Maimon, the last three Maimorim. That the necessity, just like we have to explain the necessity for the father, the necessity for Seichel, necessity for Zah, we also have to explain the necessity of Torah. Once you have Gilu Atzmos, once you have Hemshekh Atzmos, what's the need for Torah anymore? Why do you still need Torah and mitzvahs? So here is indicating that you will still need it. Yagam kim b'teira mitzvahs. Elu shlomayla b'teira mitzvahs da'achshav. Rak sheneshamas Yisrael mamshichim zal yidei aveda. It's going to be through the neshamas Yisrael and everything, but there's still going to be a role for teira mitzvahs. Things of teira l'asudlave, teira chadashim yetiteitze. So we're going to talk about a little bit now about what the function of teira. It's going to be different, but it's still going to be functional. V'o'inyan tini yedua sheish teira Hashem v'teira say. Sometimes we write the Torah, the Torah of Hashem, and sometimes we say His Torah. V'chein b'mitzvahs. Mitzvahs, you have mitzvahs Hashem, u'mitzvahs. What is the difference? Ni Torah Hashem u'mitzvahs Hashem hainu atir mitzvahs k'meishem b'chinas hamshach v'gilui she'einam b'chinas ha'atzmos. This is the Torah Hashem, mitzvahs Hashem, which is referencing the Torah mitzvahs that we have now, ordinary Torah mitzvahs, as it was given. Even though it's prior and superior to the Dagreb world, we already explained this chitzenius ak, and also chachma de ein sof. So it's far superior. It's kodma la'elam, but nevertheless, mikol mokim einam b'chinas ha'atzmos mamish. Abel inyan teirasai u'mitzvahsai hu kameish ha'teira mitzvahs heim b'chinas ha'atzmos mamish. Shelamaylim b'chinas hamshach v'gilu. Hu kameish ha'kosov le'yoda enish erka rak elikim heivin darka. So realizing these psukim from Eiv, that it says no one knew its erka, its value. Rak elikim heivin darka. Only elikim knew its way. What is the elikim here? The elikim within helam ha'atzmi the ein sof. Elikim here is not meaning kelim, is not meaning keich hagvul. It's called elikim is a reference here to helam ha'atzmi the ein sof. A God tifa madrega. Higher than gilui. Helam ha'atzmi. Kumish kosu v'kodetir ba'abiyah d'chiyar is teitzit tzmacha. The elikim hu bechinas atik. So he uses the Elikim here, is called Atik, and he says it alone knows the ways of this Torah. Where the Eibishter knows the Torah. That's Torah say. This diagram of Torah when Lasid Lavi, Kamishakos Torah Chadash Mititeitze, that there's going to be a new Torah that's going to come out, Chidush Torah Mititeitze. What is this new Torah? It's going to be a Chidush in Torah. The same Torah, but in a way that is Batz Musli, not the diagram of Torah, which is Chitzeni Yisag, but Pnim Yisag.
So it's me, Ititete we say? How we pronounce it?
But how is that achieved? How do you cause, just like we had David HaMelech with Mechaber Torah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu L'mayla, how do you make the Torah fa'ensik with Elikos in such a way to be shaykh to Atzmus? Hayda Aved in Shabbos Yisrael, Achshav. Our Aved now is what achieves that. Shemamshichim b'chinas HaTorah mitzvos k'mei she'im ba'atzmus mamish. Shezahu inyan ha'ilad b'deim li mamish. Shehu b'chinas teisves ei l'mayla me'amshachas HaTorah at mitzad atzmei. So the same sort of process that happens with Dibur, the same process that happens with Isha, the same process that happens with Guf, the same process that happens with Malchus, happens with Neshama Yisrael in Torah. That we're mamshich a teisves ei in Torah. Such that Torah is nimshach min ha'atzmus. The hamshach HaTorah mitzad atzmei k'moshen itl Miyomayim. Torah, the way it's nimshach, the way itself, without the aved of neshama yisrael, hu rak k'mosh HaTorah, he b'bechinas hamshach v'gilui. It's b'bechinas hamshach v'gilui. What we've explained the whole time about giluyim. The giluyim are not the etzem. Gilu is not etzem. Gilu is a gilu of the etzem. But it's not the etzem. It's a reflection of the etzem. It's dovek in the etzem. But its whole function is bishvil azulas. It's in a state of amshach of a gilu. It only knows gilu. Only knows, it wants to pronounce the qualities of the mo'eh to the zulas. Hasn't got that atmistic quality of just being calm. Still doesn't have to constantly explain things to other people. Hasn't got that independence, that self-sufficiency. So when the Torah is nitla mayla, is only b'chinas hamshach v'gilui. V'gam zeh nimshach b'Yisrael Yisrael da'avka chanal. And don't forget that why is it even nimshach in the first place? Because of Yisrael. For the sake of Yisrael. Just like there's a father because of the mother, just because there's intellectual consciousness because of Dibur, just like there's an neshama because of the Guf. It's through the Aved of Neshama Yisrael that the Torah is Nimshach min ha'atzmus. This is the growth that is achieved by Neshama Yisrael. Or because of their superior origin in Atmos Ein-Sof. Okay? Not necessarily anything new, but just playing everything through. Feeding through all of the other information into this system. Okay. Now concentrate. V'al-pi kol hanal yuvan. So based on everything above, it's understood Masha Knesset Yisrael Nikroim case. We can understand now why in Knesset Yisrael are called case. Shebezem rumors Masha Neshamas Yisrael Him Bechinas Mekablin. The association of calling Knesset Yisrael a case is to indicate that Neshamas Yisrael are Mekablin. For Oid Zois, but more than that, Masha Mamshichim Bechinas Teisvis Eiris B'Hamashpia. They're not just Mekabel, that they are Makabel, is to indicate what they achieve through being Makablim, which is their poil teisvis eir in the mashpia. The alpi pashut, because the pashut concept of a cup, hariyakis nasi lakabu b'seicha yain mayim. The basic function of a cup is to receive in it wine or water. The simple pshat, basic makabel is makabel eir, malchus makabel eir is milamayla, dibur is makabel the eir aseichel eir amides, isha is makabel from ish, guf is makabel from the shama. Al derech zeh neshama Yisrael makabel the Eir HaShefa Eliki from the Torah. So how do you nikraim kais? We call them a kais. Shem kli lekabel. That's al pi poshet. Omnam ike inyan kabbalas HaShefa the neshamas Yisrael hu bebechinas hashpa pnimius va'atzmus. Kanal b'inyan chasunasei. The way neshamas Yisrael receive the Eir HaShefa Eliki is in a manner of hashpa pnimius va'atzmus. The hashpa they get is not hashpa chitzenis. It's hashpa pnimius from HaKadosh Baruch Hu from the Torah. Shehu Eir HaTorah. She bechinas pnimius bichlal. The Torah is a bechinas pnimius. It's only a pnimius because of neshamas Yisrael. But the whole place it's a hemshekh pnimius. Remember, the second mime is the emphasis on the hashpa pnimius. First mime was hashpa chitzenis. Here the emphasis.
Wow.
The first mime is about dibur, which is hashpa chitzenis, right? Whereas the emphasis in the second mime is hashpa pnimius. Remember, right at the very beginning, the ois is like this. Just like we said by dibur, hu hashpa ruchnis, shenikra shefa chitzenis bichlal. The Yisaf in this Maimah is talking about hashpa pnimis. And that is a more appropriate understanding of the relationship of neshamas Yisrael and Torah. The mashal of neshamas Yisrael and Torah is more comparable to the mashal of ish v'isha than it is to dibur and seichel.
Okay. So why do we bring dibur b'chlal? Just skip. That was what the whole from the beginning, from the first mind, was trying to explain the Indian of Yisrael Mikra case, yeah.
At the begin in the first Maimah, we laid out all of the sort of the things on Amid Gimel. We said Malchus is called the case. We said Dibur is called the case. We said Isha is called the case. And we said Neshamas Yisrael is called the case.
So we explained them.
We explained all of them, and each one gives us a better grasp of the concept. But here we're talking about Ashba Pnimis v'Atzmis. Kanal bin Yem Chasunah Seishu Eir HaTorah Shehi Bebechinas Pnimis Bichlal. Kanal. V'Hashem Zeh Nikra Case. That's why it's called a case. Not just called a case. Miloshen Kli Kibbel. It's called a case because Miloshen is from the concept of a case being an Isha and being Mekabel Ashba Pnimis. Like it says in the Gemara, gives a motion in the Gemara that a person shouldn't drink from this cup and have his eyes on another cup, which is a euphemism for being married to one woman and having his eyes on another woman. Their case is used as a euphemism. It's a moshel. Why is a woman called a case? She's a makabel. So Neshknes is also called a case. They received the Torah, but just like an Isha is Ashba Pnimis, so too with Neshamas Yisrael is Ashba Pnimis. V'zeu the Isa B'Zayar. And when we do this, the summary, I'll bring this up more, but the Ashba Pnimis enables the creation of a new thing, which is much more. Whereas with Ashba Chitzenis, you can't create seichel. A kot kem nish aruf stellen, like he said, right? So that's why Ashba Pnimis has certain other emphasized characteristics. Ashba is begashmius. Ashba from the mashpi is begashmius. Torah is begashmius. Tibbus Tchar is begashmius. And it's able to reproduce. Okay, it's much more of a keich atzmi. The Zel is the bezoya boy daf mem gimel amid aleph in pashas boy daf mem gimel amid aleph. Shalachin tiknu asar dvarim bekeishal bracha. In the keishal bracha there are 10 takonis. Molei v'chuli. Lefisha atayra nitna ba'aseres hadibrei shein klolis kol atayra. because it parallels the Aseres HaDibros, which is Klolos Kol HaTorah. The entirety of Torah is sort of included in the Aseres HaDibros. That's why in the Aseres HaDibros you have 620 Asiyas connected to 620 mitzvahs. So how do you make sure the kais is a kli kibbul lekabel, is a kli roy, that the kli should be shaykh, the neshamas Yisrael should be shaykh? Tiknu boigam ken asar dvarim. You have to have all manner of things to make you into kli kibbul. From the base, he said the kais hu hey. So we have another thing. Kais is the letter hey of Shem Havaya. Hatzarich asar dvarim keneged yud, which needs to have 10 components to be a keli for the yud, which is gematria 10. Pirush Aramaz, shahayud zoin yisaid abba shemaybe yisaid za. The yud of Shem Havaya is yisaid abba chachma, which is meir in the darg of yisaid za, which is then nimshach b'malchus shiyis hey. Say them.
Sure.
Good. Be'ef shleiman ki yesh yud the havaya ve'yud the adnai. B'hainu chochme ilah v'chochme tata. Which is chochme batzilus and then malchus batzilus. So bitl amiti u'bitl ayesh b'bechinas kabbalas el malchus shamayim. Ba'asar devarim b'koishel bracha him b'bechinas yud the adnai. So inyan kabbalas el malchus shamayim. וכמיים אלא מקוד משמע לבהיים שמיה בכדי שיקבל עליו אל מחשמיים תחילה ואחר כך יקבל עליו אל מצווס. So it has to be the Kabbalah's El in order to be a keli for the hemshekh HaTorah, the chachmas HaTorah and the mitzvahs. כמיים קיבל מלכוסי ואחר כך קיבל גזירה יסי. בחינס המצווס חולי. The Kabbalah's El מחשמיים הוא בחינס הכויס והכלי לגילו יוד לשם הוויה. So the Avodah of Kimatir Mitzvahs, the Kabbalah Semach Shamayim, which comes from Sheirish Etzem HaNeshama, the Ma'ila Mitam B'das, makes a person into a keli for the Giluyim of the Yud Shem Havaya, the Chachmas HaTorah. But the whole reason why there is Amshach of the Chachmas HaTorah is mitzad the Kais. And when it's Nimshach in the Kais, no, even if Ashba Pnimis is able to be made b'day malay, is able to be creative, create the world, create Mekayim the world. And that's all because of its higher Sheirish Natzmas. Because the Umashik Nesison Nikra Kais, Shem Kli Lekabel Bechinas HaChochma Shehu Bechinas HaTorah Chuli. Aber weiter, V'oizoi Shishloimar, but more than this we can say, Ki Kamoi HaKois Boi Ba'al Yodoi Sheisa Ba'al HaKois, that when you have a cup is the Makabel, and the contents of the cup are the Mashpiyah. What's poured into the cup. But what do you do with the cup? You drink from it. So the cup becomes a mashpia. It's the means by which the mashpia, and the person who's drinking from the cup becomes the makabel. In the mashal we had the Eibishter pouring into the cups. Right? So he pours mitzadim v'zarachim, hot water, cold water. So we've till now been talking about the relationship of the kois to the content, the things that are poured into it. Now he says, "Kamoish hakois boy val yodishes balakois." Kenksiv, so too it says in Pashas Eikim, "Ta shamayim tishtamayim." The apostle is talking about the mountains and the hills and everything, and they drink from the rain of the heaven. Why doesn't the apostle say mimtar hashamayim tishtamayim? Why limtar? Ela pirush ki limtar hashamayim shu bechinas mad haba mayim tchurin haba milamayla bechinas chachmila vishenitna min hashamayim v'nikra mata. So we use the term mata as a reference to the hemshekh milamayla, which in our context we were talking about, which chachma ilah, which is the Torah, yeah. So what would be the difference between it saying Mimtar Hashamayim Tishtamayim?
If it were to say what?
You can say Limtar.
Mimtar.
To and from.
So it drinks from it.
Yes.
Or Limtar.
For it or to it.
So why if it's Limtar is it hemshekh milamayla? It's nitna min Hashamayim.
Mimtar, yeah.
It's not that they take it. It's given to them.
What, Mimtar? It's given to them?
No, Limtar.
Mimtar. Yeah.
Given to who?
The Shemaim.
Yeah.
It's for the Shemaim, so whatever it is.
Going to Shemaim. And Mimtar Shemaim is from the Shemaim.
Do something else.
So that would be Mimtar would be my Chodin, no?
Yeah. And then he brings another pasuk similarly from Azinu. Kameshakosov Yarif Kamato Likhi. My likhi, or my lekuchim, the thing that is mine, it pours down like rain, right? The koyal to likhi is a reference to Torah. The pshat of likhi is a reference, is the moshel for Torah. So it's like that pours down. The Torah in your meir ageshem. Knesset Yisrael hanikra eretz tishta limtar hashamayim. Knesset Yisrael are called this. We are the land which drinks from this heavenly rain. Tishka v'tashpia limtar hashamayim. That it's mashpia to the rain. The bechinas haTorah k'moshe nitna min hashamayim. So that the power of Neshamas Yisrael, Knesset Yisrael, is they're able to be mashpia onto the hashpah that they receive. V'hainu aderech nekeva to seviv geba, which is like the concept of the nekeva, the feminine, the female, which will encompass the male, which is a nevuah for last lovely. K'moshe kosev v'hoya b'yemahu yotzu mayim chaim Yerushalayim chesim al yam hakadmeini. It will be on that day that living waters will come out from Yerushalayim. The spears to the primordial sea.
Isn't that arrows?
Arrows. Shehu bechinas yom.
We learned that in Kedushin.
Shehu bechinas yom hachachma. The Yam HaKadmoni, the primordial sea, is the sea of wisdom, of Chachma, Tzilas. I know that Torah, Kameishi B'chinas Chachma Akduma Da'ak. So a reference to the Torah the way it is in Chachma Akduma Da'ak, Chitzeni Yisak, don't forget. V'al Kei Mitam Zeh Nimshlu L'Keis. And for this reason it's Nimshlu L'Keis. Koloshin L'Yishta B'Keis Zeh. You shouldn't drink from this cup and look at another cup. The Mashpia is the one who drinks from the cup. Imkein hu gam ke makabel. The mashpia becomes a makabel too. By dint, the relationship gets reversed. This is because of the Mailas and Sham. I didn't explain properly the Imtar Shamayim, the Mimtar, Limtar. I'll leave it. I'll do it. I want to get that close, so I'll explain it in the next show when we do the summary. But we've sort of added in something over here, which he hasn't elaborated upon. But again, I see this Maimah very much being laying down a whole load of markers for the future, and when we get there, I'll be referring back to this a lot, and you'll see in the sort of the kitzah over here, many of the ideas that he's going to want to elaborate later on. So it's whilst it's a very difficult mimer to read through,
Yes.
just because it doesn't give you a lot of hasbara to work with the inyanim. You can look up in all the Miyomayim and you can find a lot of hasbara and try and work it all through, but it's definitely not as easy to read as the first mimer. But there are very, very key points that's being made over here. So we'll have one more share on this, just to summarize it and to emphasize the nekudos, which are going to be very important going forward. But it is the end of the first section of the hemshekh.
In what sense? Like there's one particular topic and afterwards it goes into something else? This
part of the hemshekh is explaining kois. The next 3 Maimorim are going to explain Midas Hadin.
Next 2 minutes, right?
Or Mayim Chamim. And then the last 3 Maimorim will explain Shittim in Midas Arachim. So this is the end of that first section.